Welcome to Valheim. My name is Ulf, and I'm your teacher here at Ulf's School for Gifted Vikings. We have a lot to cover in the next few lessons. We are going to talk about runestones, dreams, and how all the creatures made it here into the 10th world. And then we'll talk about immortality and memory, and we'll see if one of Fader's memories in particular could unlock the secrets that await us in the Deep North. But before all that, let me tell you about my travels here. I'm sure that you've seen some of my runestones scattered all over the place. The meadows were all right. Heed these words of Ulf, a poor settler in a strange land. You will find here good stone and wood, all you need to build a house. These things Ulf has learned for himself. Now he writes them on the stone to help others. Pray to Odin for his soul. The swamp was awful. Heed the words of poor Ulf and do not build your house beside murky waters. Bad dreams and a soggy bed are all you will find. I leave this stone as a warning and go now to make my dwelling on higher ground. The mountains were even worse. Where this stands, I once saw a great drake flying above me and I hid in a bush until she passed. Ulf the Brave carved this stone. The plains were too hot for Ulf, a man used to brushing snow from his beard. He carved this stone and moved on. The mistlands proved treacherous. The raven showed me how to make a staff that set my beard on fire. I will meddle no more in such things. Weary of the mist and magic, Ulf carved this stone. Now I go to find a less troublesome place. But a less troublesome place was nowhere to be found. I have not been happy for more than a day in any place since I came here, but this place is the worst of all. Most things are on fire, and the fishing is not good. These are the words of Ulf. So, any questions?
Deep North when?
Any other questions?
Yeah, what are all these weird dreams I keep having?
Excellent question. While you're here, you're going to experience some crazy dreams while you sleep, if you can even get any sleep. And if you pay attention, you'll actually learn a lot about your past. Turns out, you were quite the warrior. Once again, you run at the head of your warriors, the weight of your father's axe in your hand. You wake with a war cry on your lips. You stand at the prow of a leaping ship, the salt spray before you and the joyful shriek of gulls above. Folded within a dream, you remember what it was like to be alive in the land of your birth. Amidst the crash of arms, on the dark and glimmering plain of sleep, a face swells, snarling before you. Your shield arm hangs limp, your spear is broken. You welcome the cold blade when it comes. From a dream of death, you awaken to death itself. You lie on the battlefield, dreaming eyes turned upward to a sky veiled by smoke. The call of your warriors grow fainter and your eyes close for a second time. Great talons slide beneath you, and you feel yourself rising, lifted from your body like a babe from its crib. So, the Valkyrie picked you up off the battlefield, and that's how you got here. Next question?
So, who left all the other runestones?
Another great question. You're going to see a lot of runestones scattered around the place left by all sorts of people. Some appear to be left by previous Vikings like yourself. Some appear to be written by the old inhabitants of these lands trying to preserve their history. And honestly, I think Odin may have actually written a few, thinking that we wouldn't notice. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. Listen, why don't we start for those of you that just read that nice little opening crawl as the Valkyrie flew you in here. I'm going to need to fill in a few gaps for you, and then we're going to talk about some things that don't quite add up here. Long ago, the Allfather Odin united the worlds. Now you need to understand that when Valheim was originally united with the other 9 worlds, all kinds of things were going on down here. The Necks are native to Valheim. The Draugr were once a proud and noble people building towers that touched the clouds. Ancient tribes even lived in Valheim before the Allfather turned his eye to this place. The Locks roamed the plains for centuries. And the Jotun ruled the world until their time ran out and they were ousted by some other power.
Ousted by what other power?
Oh, we'll get to that. Now I know what you're thinking. Wow, Valheim kinda seemed like a pretty chill place before Odin banished the Forsaken. And you'd be right, it was pretty chill, until Odin stepped in and cast aside his enemies, afraid of those that opposed him. He threw down his foes and cast them into the 10th world. 8 were the creatures banished to this world by mighty Odin in the first days of his kingship. 8 gods and monsters too proud to bear his yoke. Now exactly why were they banished here? Well, first, we meet Eikthyr, the great stag of the meadows. He embodies primal nature and the untamable wilderness that cannot be subdued. And even in his death, he says, "The wilderness will never submit to Odin's rules." and as a punishment, I guess Odin banished him here to exile. The Elder is the king of the Grey Dwarfs, the old man of the Black Forest. The ravens say that in ages past he was a shoot of great Yggdrasil itself, and a force of wisdom in the days when men and tree were friends. Now he scorns the axe and sets himself against the works of the gods themselves. Odin banished him here for his pride, but his roots are deep. Bone mass is the monstrosity of the swamp. Bones and vicious goo held together by some unseen force. 1,000 bones without their meat that will drag you to your doom. While bone mass is certainly a foe to be reckoned with, it isn't exactly clear why he was banished here, or maybe if he was created here, we'll be coming back to him. Moder is the mother of all dragons. In Midgard of old, the armies of man pushed back the drakes from the mountains just as the Vanir threw down their mother and cast her into the mountains of Valheim. Yagluth, the great sorcerer and king of the Fuelings, waged war against Odin and would not bend or break before his fury. So Odin tore his body in half and cast the remains into Valheim, where he bled into the earth and crumbled to dust, wept over by the last of his people. The Queen is the monstrous seeker matriarch and the big bad of the Mistlands. While it isn't clear why she was banished to Valheim either, I'm sure Odin had his reasons. And lastly, the King of the Emerald Flame, ruler of the Ashlands before it was a forsaken hellscape. It's Vader. Now we don't know why he was banished either, but as we'll see later, he may have been the closest to escaping. So Odin cast his enemies into Valheim, and then he split the boughs that held their prison to the World Tree and left it to drift unanchored, a place of exile. You dream of a great tree reaching out through the night. One half of its branches crackle with flames, the others are green with leaves. For centuries, this world slumbered uneasily, but it did not die. As glacial ages passed, kingdoms rose and fell out of the sight of the gods. Now here's where everyone else comes in. We mentioned the Draugr, whose pride was their undoing. They challenged the very gods and went to war against the Aesir and the Vanir, destroying themselves completely. Great Odin leveled their cities, and Loki consumed their mines in fire. Mighty Thor broke down their towers, and Freya sowed their seeds with salt tears. Now they are sunk many hundreds of years deep, no songs sing of their stories, and the earth has claimed their cities. For long ages, Odin's eye was turned from Valheim. Yet while the gods ignored it, other creatures crept and fell through the cracks into the forgotten world. Trolls, goblins, and men found their way along these secret paths. One of those was yours truly. The Elder created the Grey Dwarfs from seeds of sin. Wolves inhabited the mountains. And Surtlings came from the swamp geysers. The male drakes guard the eggs of the much larger female frostworms. And then we have the Dvergr, your best friends in times of need. Munin tells us that they are trapped here, long since separated from their kin in Nidavellir. Trapped here still they toil, expecting reprieve that will never come. They are descendants of the great smiths of old, and they even dug the infested mines and trapped the queen in the infested citadel. They mine soft tissue from the bones of the long-dead Jotun, the most ancient of Odin's kin and fiercest of all his adversaries. And they distill Eider, the stuff of magic. In the Ashlands, there was once the greatest kingdom in all of Valheim. There lived the sons and daughters of the king of the Emerald Flame, before he was corrupted by the Winter Child and destroyed his whole kingdom, but more on that later. Now it's important to mention that here in Valheim, some creatures were banished, some slipped through the cracks, but some were actually born and strengthened from the very magic in the soil on which you now stand. Remember when we said Odin tore Yagluth's body in half and cast his remains into Valheim, where he bled into the earth? And how I mentioned that the Dvergr mined the bones of the Jotun for magic? Well, strap in for this. There is no death that does not bring new life. As worms feed on the battlefield, so did the great corpses of Odin's enemies bring new life to Valheim. Lesser creatures fed on their flesh, fattening themselves on the ancient magic that still clung to them. Their spirits trickled into the earth to renew the soil or sought out new bodies for themselves. One thing we know is that all creatures feed on this magic and transform into stronger, smarter, and more vicious versions of themselves in this undying cycle of death, rebirth, evolution, and magic. Clearly, there was a lot going on in Valheim before you got here, and one thing you need to be made aware of is that these creatures are much harder to eradicate than you would think. Valheim is a weird place, and nothing here seems to actually ever die, or at least nothing truly stays dead. There is no death that does not bring new life. What is living must die, and what is dead must be born again. So once you kill an enemy here, most of them will drop a trophy for you to hang on your wall, and some of them have odd descriptions implying that they ain't quite dead yet. The fallen Valkyrie says though she is dead, she still yearns for the blood to flow. With the Draugr, you have to bind up the mouth if it starts to whisper in the night. And the Elder, even in death, it seems to grin with secret knowledge. And with Yagluth, sometimes the eyes still move and the lips mutter silently. With the Cultist, the fire in its eyes has still not burned out. Gearhoffa is giving you an icy stare. With the Charred Warlock, a warm glow seems to almost emanate from within. Handle with care. The Marksman's legs could hold infinite power. And with the Fueling Shaman, even killing it couldn't wipe the knowing smile from its crooked lips. The Serpent Scales have dulled, but the eyes are still bright. The Brenna trophy is still burning somehow. Her rage burned so hot that it stayed with her after death. And the Abomination has been dead so long it started living again. The Surtling is wreathed in pale flame, it still smolders like an ember. And the Grey Dwarf Shaman, it may try to come back, so be sure to prune any new shoots. Even once you kill the 7 Forsaken bosses and hang their heads, they still mutter words and taunt you, somehow staying alive enough to communicate beyond the grave. So you were my death. You look so small and soft. Tell Odin he may have broken this form, but the wilderness will never submit to his rules. Little thing of blood and bone, I should have snapped you like a twig. Now I wither and die. Let the great tree have me. Thank you, warrior. We who lived on in this shape were denied the peace of death for too long. We go now. Sheathe your pride, creature of Odin. My long reign is at an end, but those who come after me are greater still. Do you come to gloat, little thing? Do you know how many times I've been killed, broken, banished, burned, and buried? You are not the first, and you will not be the last. Tell Odin that my kin will bring forth another. A monarch never dies. I followed a false destiny, and it gave me nothing but ruin. Forgive me, my love. Now, just as the great corpses of Odin's enemies brings new life to Valheim, the King of the Emerald Flame himself performed some powerful magic in the Ashlands. We'll cover more of the Ashlands lore in a minute, but all the inhabitants are literally dead people walking, quickened by the eternal flame. The pure fire of a grand drake has the power to give life and quicken the dead earth. Once they bless this lands and seas with their cleansing flame, bringing new life wherever they passed. But for those who are burned by a drake's fire, the blessing is a curse. They are killed and quickened at the same time, caught forever between death and life. Such are the unfortunate souls who wander this ruined land with flames for flesh and agony in every moment. They cannot be destroyed, only pitied. Now only these charred ruins remain, within which not even the dead can find rest. And guess what? You're not exactly immune from dying either. When Odin heard his enemies were growing once again in strength, he looked to Midgard and sent his Valkyries to scour the battlefields of their warriors. Dead to the world, they would be born again, in Valheim. So, the Forsaken creatures are growing too powerful here, and Odin needs you to vanquish them. You land among the megalith sacrificial stones that represent the Forsaken, which you must slay in order to ascend to Valhalla. Funny that Odin finds us dead and brings you here so you can be born again, because just like the other creatures in Valheim, even you, young Viking, are now stuck in this eternal loop of death and rebirth in the 10th world. Once you learn how to craft a bed, you can place that bed anywhere in the world, and if you happen to perish, you'll simply be reborn at the last bed you placed, and whoop-de-doo, you're still stuck in Valheim. Even if you don't place a bed, or your bed gets destroyed, you're eternally bound to at least be born again where the Valkyrie dropped you off, surrounded by the Forsaken stones, taunting you for having to start over. But listen, don't feel too special. You're not the only Viking to have experienced this. We are many who have come before you, carried here by Odin's will to do his work. The path ahead is hard and the danger's great. And this poor fella has been reborn many times in this world. I have died again and again only to awaken in my own house. Yet still I wonder, how many more times will I return like this? And of course my buddy Harold, he really went through it. Good friend, lay your hand on this stone and remember Harold who carved it. In Midgard I lost my life on the battlefield, but in Valheim it was restored to me. Yet still my battle continued. In the Green Meadows I fought Eikthyr the great stag and lost an eye to his horns. In the deep woods I gave my shield hand to the old man of the forest, and took a Draugr arrow below my ribs that my fingers can still feel. On the mountainside I fought the mother drake, but she bit off my leg at the knee, so I must walk always with a staff. Now my last battle must be at hand. When I sleep this time, where will I wake? So, now you have the gift of eternal immortality. It does get pretty exhausting, and the excitement does eventually wear off. It isn't all it's cracked up to be. In fact, you can actually lose this gift. Know, traveler, that while you cannot die in the world of Valheim, yet you can cease to be reborn. Many are those who have come before you to work the will of Odin, only to find their own will failing. Unfortunately, there are many a Viking that got knocked down and just couldn't get back up. Frida was taken by a serpent and her bed lies empty still. Bjarni was bitten in half by a troll and neither half has been seen since. All around are the ruins of those who came before us, but where are the hands that built them? Perhaps when a warrior loses their will to remain here, they can no longer return. You who pass, remember me. I am a man whose home was once in the mountains of Midgard, carried here when I thought I'd earn my rest, to find a life after life in Valheim. There were 7 of us before the Grey Dwarfs came. Now Odin will not hear me, and the seas refuse me. Soon this stone will be all that remains. Few of us found our way in these mountains. We were 20, and now we are 2. Agda is dying. A Draugr arrow lies near her heart. I will bid her farewell beside this stone and give her ashes to the wind. Then I will turn my face to the highest peak and seek out the Winged One. May Odin give me death or glory. And of course this poor chap. The depths of the cave promised me riches. Down it turns is easier than up. The lake helped the best it could, but it could only do so much. Took all my strength not to empty it completely, to leave you weary traveler a chance just as I had. I hope you came here more prepared than I. If not, there's room here next to me to just lay down and rest. So hang on to this thought. You pretty much can't die, and other creatures in this world also pretty much can't die. But let's move on to a more important question. Why did Odin wipe your memory before bringing you here? Why is the concept of memory around every corner in Valheim? And is this whole journey leading up to one very important memory in particular? So remember when I said your memory was wiped on the way in here? Hugin will remind you that due to your recent departure from Midgard,
You mean kidnapping?
you will have to recall the true shape of objects. Just pick things up and it will all come back to you, I'm sure. Well, good old Harold, a man from the coast, said I remembered nothing more of my life in Midgard except that I was a warrior. In my dreams, I see the faces of those I killed. I leave this stone that at least my name will remain. And this Viking considers it a blessing that you remember nothing. Each among you is a great warrior. A warrior's soul are never clean. But Odin has gifted you a second chance. Praise the All-Father. Now, oddly enough, memory is probably the most important thing here in the forgotten world of Valheim. I mean, Odin thought it was necessary to take your memory from you, and memory even seems to fuel the magic here. I mentioned that the Dvergr mine the soft tissue from the brains and the skulls of the Jotun, and they refine that with the sap they harvest from the sap extractors to make Eider, harnessing it to create and use magical weapons, food, and armor. Eider is described as the stuff of life, the poison that consumes itself. And even some inanimate objects here appear to have some sort of memory. The soft tissue we can mine fizzles softly with ancient memories. Munin even hints at this in the Ashlands at the putrid holes. Poor pickings here. Empty skulls, scoured clean by the flames. Barely a trace of memory left. He doesn't say barely a trace of soft tissue left. He says barely a trace of memory left. And even in the swamp, below the mist and murk, bone speaks to bone, remembering flesh. And the Dernwind sword in the Ashlands. The sword that was broken is whole once more. Its flames burn hot, fueled by the memories of ancient warriors. And then there's the wishbone. This ancient bone remembers the location of many forgotten things. And we ain't just talking about silver. So keep this concept of memory in your back pocket, because we'll be coming back to it. So that's Valheim in a nutshell, and now I have to be honest with you. Even I have some questions. Why is it so important that we don't remember our past? Could Odin be hiding something? Is there something more sinister going on here that he's trying to keep hidden from us? If the Forsaken got along so well for centuries, why must we vanquish them now? Should we just blindly trust what Odin says, kill the Forsaken and ascend to Valhalla? Or should we dig a little deeper? Well, my friends, sharpen your pickaxes, get your rested buff, and eat some high stamina food, because we're going digging. Alright, let me just show you what I'm talking about. For kicks and giggles, let's just play Odin's little game and go hunt some Forsaken and see how all this pans out. This is where things get a little weird. Alrighty, first up is Eikthyr. Alright, these magical stones were scattered throughout the lands by Odin as signposts pointing towards the ritual grounds of the Forsaken. Properly arm thyself. Got it. Alright, just click this Vegdrasir here on the map. There he is. Okay, let's go get him. Make myself a spear. Look, there's the altar. Hello? Hello? Weird. Looks like nobody's home. Where is this big baddie? Hello? Where is everybody? Hello? Alright, what is this? An altar? Oh, I have to make a sacrifice to summon him? Wait, so Odin banished Eikthyr here, but Eikthr's not really here, running around causing chaos, growing in strength, like Odin said? Okay, well, what do I have to sacrifice? Some necks or something? Hunt his kin. Oh, yikes. I have to hunt down his own kin? Those innocent, peaceful deer and sacrifice their heads just to make Eikthyr appear? Odin, you cheeky git. Alright. So now we sacrifice him. Here he comes. Kill, kill, kill. Sweet, we did it. Okay, now let's go hang his head. Alright, 1 down, 6 to go. Let's go find the next one. Wait. You're not telling me I can just summon him again, can I? I already cleansed this world of the vile Eikthyr in Odin's name. Why should I kill this dude again? I'm telling you, man, something doesn't add up. Big spoiler alerts incoming. Let me give you the rundown for what you actually have to do in order to slay all the Forsaken. So like we just saw, to summon Eikthyr, we have to kill his own flesh and blood and offer them as a sacrifice just to get him to appear. Then we slay him, and we can slay him as many times as we want. Surely, and now here's the sad part, Eikthyr must be aware that not only when we fight him the first time, but every additional time after that, we're killing more and more of his kin, ending countless innocent lives that he cares for just so that he can be brought forth. So what kind of game is Odin playing here where he banishes his foes to Valheim, brings us here against our will, and allows us to slay his foes as many times as we like in an unending cycle of sacrifice and destruction, of death and rebirth? Now some of you might be thinking, you idiot, that's just how devs make a lot of games so you can refight bosses and get more of their drops. And to those people I say, I'm going to ignore you because I like speculating about stuff like this, and it might be a clue as to where the story is heading as we head into the Deep North. So chill. This seems to me more like a training ground for Odin to prepare warriors for some end goal to achieve for him rather than us just cleaning up this chaotic world for Odin. I'm going somewhere with this, just hang on. And remember when we talked about the old man of the forest raising the gray dwarfs from seeds of sin and how they live only to serve the elder and protect the wood? Well, to summon the elder, you have to hunt down and destroy the very thing he uses to bring life into his forest. Yeah, you have to go destroy those gray dwarf nests and burn the ancient seeds in an offering bowl. You have to burn their young to bring him forth. No wonder he wants to stomp you out. And for bone mass, we're gonna skip bone mass for a second. Now for motor. This one is just awful. You probably know where I'm going with this. To get her to appear, you have to what? Her what? I can't even say it. No wonder you pick up Motor's tears after the big fight. You bet her weeping tears will fall like rain. She's just a great frost dragon trying to be a good mother to all the drakes who guard her nests with their lives. Every time you summon her, she knows that she just lost 3 more of her children. Clearly, Odin not only banished the Forsaken here, but he took the deliberate extra step and implemented this whole sacrificial system of binding them to an unknown and unseen realm until you make the correct offering. And who are you making this offering to? To him. Just so the beings can be summoned and you can defeat them. He is up to something, and we're about to figure out what it is. Now onto the Wizard King. I'm convinced this guy's just trying to be a good king to his faithful people. Yagluth is the unseen force that the Fueling Shamans draw upon for their crooked magic, growing again in strength as they spread across the world. To summon him, you have to steal the totems that the Fueling hold in such high regard. And his dying soul was split and shared among all his kin, and put into these totems. And when you place them into the offering bowls, you're effectively removing the thing that the Fuelings use to worship their god, and just dunking on Yag in front of his own people, lowering his status and how his followers view him. No king wants to look like a fool in front of their kingdom, especially after he was the only one that would not bend or break before Odin's fury to protect his people. He's the only one that wouldn't give up. He even drops you his own torn spirit. the remains of Yagluth, a twisted spirit torn between this world and the next, almost as a final gesture of goodwill to you so you can brave the Mistlands. And the final nail in his coffin, his trophy reads, "The crownless head of a dead king," which kinda sucks because that implies that he used to have a crown, but now it's just a bunch of old tattered swords and rusty wire. Still, Yagluth remains true to his people. He says, "Do you come to gloat, little thing? Do you know how many times I've been killed, broken, banished, burned, and buried? You're not the first and you will not be the last." I mean, what a baller. Now, the queen is a unique one because it appears that after Odin banished her to Valheim, the Diverger actually took it upon themselves to bind her up in the infested citadel, and then they scattered the Sealbreaker fragments among the infested mines. But even though she's bound, apparently Odin still needs her dead? Question mark? Still, once you defeat her, you can summon her again by offering 3 trophies of her fallen champions on the Hive seat. Something that is surely a knife in her back from Odin every time she's reborn to fight again. After she dies fighting for her life to keep her hive safe, she has seen enough. And lastly, Fader. A father noble and proud, he soared through the skies of fire, then madness lowered its shroud and warped his heart's desire. The 7th Forsaken we must fight is the King of the Emerald Flame, king over the Ashlands. Once the greatest kingdom in all Valheim, here lived the sons and daughters of the King of the Emerald Flame. Beneath his wing we knew strength and security, in his sight we grew like green shoots. Once these bells rang for joy to celebrate his passing, but now he cannot bear to hear the sound nor the reminder. If you seek to bring him forth, give them voice once more. What a punch in the gut! Surely Fader loved to hear his people ring these bells and celebrate his kingship, but now to summon him, when we ring the bells, it's a painful reminder that he threw it all away, as we'll talk about later. He'll never hear those bells ring again for his glory, only for his ruin. I get that Fader failed as a king, and as we'll learn next, there's a lot more going on behind the scenes. But leave it to Odin to create this whole summoning ritual where we have to ring these bells to bring him forth. Odin could have just trapped him in the ruins of his castle, but no, he wanted to intentionally humiliate and torture the guy before we fight him. He wanted Fader to relive his greatest failure, Yagluth to be humiliated in front of his own people, the Queen, Moder, Elder, and Eikther to mourn the deaths of their children, and Bone Mass, well... Wanderer, look to your feet that tread upon our tomb. 1,000 bones without their meat will drag you to your doom. Now, Bone Mass doesn't really fit the Valheim Forsaken mold, like all the other bosses. It isn't clear where he came from, or what he did to get banished here. He appears to be the physical embodiment of Valheim's digestive system, the place where all dead things and bones eventually end up, a natural consequence of what happens when souls can't pass on. I'm convinced that Bone Mass was a byproduct of Valheim's curse, and not necessarily banished here by Odin. But once he appeared here, then he was forsaken, and now he's trapped here. I'm just saying he appears to be a relatively innocent being. He's a living ossuary comprised of the remains of fallen creatures in Valheim. To summon Bone Mass, you have to venture underground into the crypts and gather up the giant, withered bones and offer them in the giant skull of boiling death. His Vegvisir says, "Cook their remains." You're literally offering the remains of creatures that probably would have eventually made up more of Bone Mass himself. And once he's vanquished, his trophy even tells us, "Thank you, warrior. We who lived on in this shape were denied the peace of death for too long. We go now." Does this really sound like a threat to the world of Valheim? He even leaves you with a great parting gift. Apparently a wishbone has made its way from some creature in Valheim all the way to the swamp, and Bone Mass wants you to have it. It seems one of the many bones this living ossuary hid in his belly was a wishbone. This bone contains powerful magic, which guides you to things hidden in the earth. It can locate silver veins, but it may also lead you to buried treasure. This ancient bone remembers the location of many forgotten things. Now, I know what you're thinking. You expect us to believe that there was actually a creature in Valheim that had a magical wishbone at one point, and this wishbone is maybe even more powerful than we realize? And you know what? That's exactly what I expect you to believe. Now, who did this wishbone belong to? Could the wishbone remember more than just the location of silver and buried treasure? With so many examples of inanimate things in Valheim having memories, I'm inclined to think there's more going on here. I think that this whole story leads up to one very important memory that we need to get our hands on. But before we unpack that, we need to talk about the Ashlands. So let's go through all the Ashland's runes, and then I'm gonna fill in some gaps. Know, child unborn, that this was once the greatest kingdom in all Valheim. Here lived the sons and daughters of the King of the Emerald Flame. Beneath his wing we knew strength and security. In his sight we grew like green shoots. Now we set this stone among rubble and turn our backs on the land of our birth. May future ages take warning from us. In the forests of the far north, our scouts came across a sleeping boy sitting naked in the deep snow with his back to a tree. They wrapped him in furs and brought him back to the king, asleep all the while with only his eyelids moving. We named him the Winter Child, and we took him to be a good omen. May the gods have mercy on fools. It was known throughout the land that the two would often sit together as if in talk. The king coiled around the sleeping child with his face close, straining to catch any murmured words. Nobody knew what passed between them, but all saw a change in the king. Justice flared into wrath, and caution deepened into fear. Laws were passed that must be broken, and each time the lawbreakers were punished more harshly. Tyranny came in a spiral, like a great storm. When the King of the Emerald Flame flew south to visit the Wizard King of the Fewlings, his own thanes rose against him and torched the palace with the Winter Child inside. All of us who were alive at the time heard the shriek that sounded for the 9 days of the fire and echoed in the city streets for many weeks longer. Those were the last good days any of us knew before the return of our king. When the king saw the charred remains of his great hall, he swore to show his foes a fire far greater than the little spark they had kindled. With his breath, he razed our city to the ground and then brought war to all the land. Some of the people stayed faithful to the king, but many sought to quench his fury. Brothers fought against brothers, sisters against sisters. The kingdom of the Emerald Flame tore itself apart. Now only these charred ruins remain, within which not even the dead can find rest. The pure fire of a grand drake has the power to give life and quicken the dead earth. Once they blessed the land and seas with their cleansing flame, bringing new life wherever they passed. But for those who are burned by a drake's fire, the blessing is a curse. They are killed and quickened at the same time, caught forever between death and life. Such are the unfortunate souls who wander this ruined land, with flames for flesh and agony in every moment. They cannot be destroyed, only pitied. If the tales are true, the gods long ago abandoned this world. The King of the Emerald Flame was the closest to a god we knew, but our prayers to him have turned to ashes in our mouth. This is the last of our stronghold, and in the morning we will die defending it. We offer no more prayers and wish only for clean, free deaths, unburned by the flame. The stones tell of a great tragedy in this land, many centuries ago. It's hard to believe that the creature who stalks this ruined city was once a noble beast and a wise king. Yet we will not stay our hands on this account. When we kill him, we will count it a mercy. So let's summarize. Fader was an awesome king, and with the power of the Emerald Flame, he ruled the Ashlands. I guess before it was actually called the Ashlands, because it sounds like his cleansing flame turned it into the Ashlands. His people loved him, and they were just chilling. And then they went north, found and brought back the Winter Child, and he started murmuring to Fader every day, whispers that no one else heard. Whatever the Winter Child said stirred something in Fader that completely corrupted him. He started passing laws that the Ashland people felt they had to break, leading to terrible punishments. Fader must have then journeyed north at some point because it says he went south to visit Yagluth. And when he returned, his people had torched the Great Hall with the Winter Child inside, whose shriek sounded for 9 days, but for what it's worth, we don't actually know if that killed him. Fader returns, furious, and with the power of the Emerald Flame, he torches his people, his kingdom, and presumably himself in the process. I mean, look at the guy. I doubt he looked like this before the war. And then, I guess at some point, Odin stepped in, bound the Forsaken to their altars, and then brought the Vikings here to fight and kill all of them. But where's all this going? Why would Odin do this? And what's really going on in the Deep North? We're about to enter into Speculationheim, a world where we try to fill in the gaps in this wild and awesome story. So, we talked about how Valheim was cut off from the World Tree, how all the creatures got here, how you are basically immortal and travel throughout this land leveling up your skills to take on each of the Forsaken one by one. But now we need to figure out the why behind it all. I speculate that Odin's plan was basically this: Centuries ago, he banished the Forsaken to Valheim and let them run amok, and then this war happens in the Ashlands between Fader and his own people and who knows who else. And then Odin must have come back to Valheim, bound the 7 Forsaken to their altars, and then brought us here. I think Odin's attention was turned back to Valheim because he heard those screams of the Winter Child during those 9 days we talked about, just like how on the mountains, the air is thin and fragile. From here, you can sometimes catch sounds from other places. The ring of battle on Midgard, the roar of a feast in Valhalla, or the shriek of a Valkyrie as she crosses the space between worlds. I think Odin heard and recognized the screams of the Winter Child and needed to bring us here, convince us to kill all the Forsaken and bring him their heads, because what are kept inside heads? Fleshy brains that may contain memories of what the Winter Child murmured to them? I think Odin heard those screams and realized his worst fear was happening. The Forsaken were about to rise again to power, and they may actually be able to take him down. So first of all, the Winter Child. He's got to be this child mentioned in one of your dreams. I think this dream is you having a vision as if you were the scout that found him in the Deep North. You dream you are walking in a snowy wood when you come upon a naked child, sitting against a tree with his eyes closed but his chest moving to breathe. As you kneel beside him, you know he's been sleeping here for many centuries, waiting for you. When you touch his shoulder, you both awaken. Now let me fill in the gaps between some of the Ashland's runestones. I think that there must be a powerful and mysterious magic in the Deep North that is unlike anything we've seen before. We'll call it the DNP, the Deep North Power. If harnessed by the Forsaken, or a strong enough warrior like yourself, it could be used against Odin and end him for good. I think that the Winter Child holds the keys to acquiring such a power, and he whispered its secrets to Fader. When the scouts brought him back, the Winter Child saw that Fader could wield the Emerald Flame, and he figured that Fader would have what it takes to wield the DNP and help him end Odin. Now, maybe the Winter Child is Loki or some other powerful being, I don't know, but regardless, he gave this information to Fader. And I suggest that this power is only attainable at a great cost. Possibly that of Fader having to make the sacrifice of his own people in order to obtain it. I say this because of the monuments of torment and the effigies of malice spread throughout the Ashlands. They seem very different than the other mob spawners in Valheim. Nests for the Grey Dwarfs, the body piles of the Draugr. The monuments of torment imply that the previous Ashlands inhabitants that are bound to this spawn point suffer some kind of torture until they are released into the world to fight us. Is this what happened to the lawbreakers that were punished more harshly? Is this a result of Fader's justice flaring to wrath and caution deepening into fear? Maybe Fader had to let go of the reign of his kingdom in exchange for the Deep North power to take down his true enemy, Odin. Regardless, at some point, Fader must have traveled north because the runestone says that he traveled south to visit Yagluth, and I bet that he traveled north to see for himself if the DNP actually existed. He must have seen and confirmed its existence, then flown south to seek counsel from the other powerful Sorcerer King in Valheim, thinking that of all the other creatures, Yagluth would be able to help him, and I think that they became allies. I mean, look at the flags in the fueling villages. Don't they look awfully similar to the ones hanging in the charred fortresses? The strongholds of those loyal to Fader? I think that Fader and Yag partnered up, agreeing to share the DNP and take down Odin together. And as a symbol of their commitment, Yag's people flew the red flags of Fader's kingdom. So now Fader has Yag in his back pocket. He returns to, presumably, his own people having killed the Winter Child. And then, in a fit of rage, he torches the city, quickening his people. And that's really all the information the game gives us up to this point. Now we have to make some assumptions here. I have to assume that it was in this fit of rage and war against his people that led to Fader's battle scars, like his missing wing, the scars all over his body, the gaping hole in his chest. Wait a second. The gaping hole in his chest? So, if Odin is after the brains of the Forsaken so he can get the memory he's after, he's looking for two things. One, what the Winter Child murmured, and two, what exactly the Deep North power is. I suspect that possibly even Odin himself wielded this power in the past at some point, but we'll get to that in a minute. So, Odin's looking for this memory, and that would kind of explain why there's so much focus on memory throughout the game. The memories of ancient things fuel the magic in this world, and memories themselves hold incredible power. But is Odin perhaps looking in the wrong spot? Should he be looking somewhere else in Valheim? Should he be looking for an ancient bone that remembers the location of forgotten things? If you've made it past the swamp, are you already in possession of something that could help you find the memory? Y'all ready to learn something? Did you know that wishbones are only found in winged creatures like birds, vultures, and dragons? Did you know that the wishbone's primary function is to strengthen the thoracic skeleton of the creature so it can withstand the rigors of flight? Pretty sure it didn't come from a crow or a valkyrie or a vulture. Pretty sure it came from right here. That's right, people. I think the memory of what the Winter Child told Fader was stored in his wishbone rather than in his brain. I think it got ripped out during the war in the Ashlands and cast aside, left in the earth. And then when Odin shows up and binds the Forsaken to their altars, I think Fader's wishbone stayed behind, eventually making its way to Valheim's living ossuary, Bone Mass. And once we get the wishbone, we can use it to guide us to things hidden in the earth, to find what the Winter Child told Fader about. We can pick up the torch where Fader left off and finally try to take down Odin and end this perpetual cycle of death and rebirth in this prison. Now let's land this plane. I think we're going to be given a choice in the 1.0 release. Once we kill the queen, we can make ceramic shields to reinforce our ships, and I think we can travel either north or south. Choose to complete Odin's wishes and go to the Ashlands, hang Fader's head on the sacrificial stone and ascend to Valhalla, or go to the Deep North, go after the Deep North power, and use it to take down Odin. Now, say that we actually obtain this power. Are there any clues that could tell us what this ancient power might actually be? Now, before we take a closer look at some evidence of this Deep North power being used here in Valheim, we need to take a closer look at the Forsaken trailer that was just released. There are 4 new animated scenes that we see here, and I know we're not supposed to take the trailer footage seriously because not all images appear in the game. And you know what? I don't care. I'm having fun. Just listen. The first scene is a ship sailing away from a burning village, and then we see a depiction of a battlefield with a stone statue of Odin in the center with his wolves on either side, and then a Valkyrie swoops in, and presumably this is where your story might start. Listen to the voiceover here.
His Valkyries carried your wretched souls here to fend for yourselves in the wilderness.
This sounds like the same battlefield that you Vikings dream of, where you were picked up by the Valkyrie and brought here. And finally, we see a close-up of a hooded Odin, flanked on the hill with other beings that appear to be gearing up to fight some big bad monsters. Now, we know this one on the right is Odin, based on the color of his cloak from the previous shot, and it looks like this one on the left might even be Hela, based on her headdress. And I'm just gonna say it, are these creatures out here in the field the Jotun that once ruled Valheim? That would mean that this scene takes place centuries ago, and you know what? I think that Odin once wielded the Deep North power and used it against the Jotun. Maybe that's what is meant by them being ousted by some other power. I'm betting that Odin once conquered the Jotun just like he defeated and banished the Forsaken. And remember, we're in Speculation-heim here, but what condition are the Jotun in now? It's time to talk about petrification, the process where organic material is turned to stone. The Jotun skeletons are petrified bone, but their brains appear to still be intact. We and the Diverger harvest their soft tissue that still sizzles with ancient memories from their petrified skulls, and we use it to create Eider and fuel all magical things in Valheim like we've talked about. So did Odin use the Deep North power to petrify the Jotun when he conquered them? I wonder if this is the same power that was used when Fader was bound to his altar. While every other boss just appears from or on the ground, Fader is the only one that comes flying in from the sky inside an asteroid. He's encased in stone, but kept alive inside, similar to the Jotun skulls being turned to stone while their brains are still preserved inside. Maybe this was even used to preserve the summoned trolls that strangely soar into Valheim the same exact way as Fader. Here's what I suggest. The Deep North power is something that has the ability to petrify, or at least partially petrify, living things. It can turn the outer shell of an organism into stone and preserve the life inside. So you may be thinking, are there other examples of this in Valheim? Well, you bet your berserker britches. What are the 3 cores we find in the game? They are energy and life encased in a hard outer shell. Surtling cores throb with inner heat. Black cores are filled to the brim with ancient power. Molten cores have potent energy swirling within, ready to be unleashed. Did someone long ago use the Deep North petrification power to capture the energy in this world so that it can be used to bend the rules of reality by creating portals, shield cores and shield generators, Galder tables, Eider refineries, wards, blast furnaces, etc.? So, say that we harness this petrification power and we use it against Odin, then what? He just turns into stone? Is that what this scene is depicting? Is this depicting what actually happens in the future? Did we all rally together in one big battle and finally take down Odin by entombing his living body inside a prison of stone? If that's the case, then this is not showing the Valkyrie picking you up from a past battle that you came from, but a future final battle that clearly wipes out most of us warriors. Is the battlefield from your dreams actually just here in the Deep North where the final battle occurs? If we succeed in this mission and destroy Odin, are the Valkyrie swooping in and carrying us off to another reality? Another seed of Valheim where they wipe our memories again and try to convince us again to fight and kill all the Forsaken so that Odin can get the Deep North power for himself? This would mean that every dream we have, every memory we cling on to, they're all just simply things that happened in the past here in Valheim. The salt spraying while sailing our ships, running at the head of our warriors, the weight of our father's axe in our hand. Maybe that's why it's so important that Odin wipes our memory on the way in here, because this is not our first time in the 10th world. This honestly kind of clears up something that Huygen says that never really made sense. Just pick things up and it'll all come back to you. So you're telling me that according to Odin, we are from Midgard, and we're supposed to just pick things up here in Valheim like a celestial feather, an Asksvin trophy, refined eider, and ashwood, and remember, oh yeah, I can use this to make a feathery wreath, which is an improvement for my Galder table. I'm sorry, but they didn't have this stuff in Midgard. You remember it because you've picked it up before here in Valheim. Now, I know what you're thinking, that's looking way too deep into things, that's grasping at flax, you're just looking for lore in places that ought not to be looked in. And you're probably right, but did I say I was done? There's still like 5 minutes left of this video. When you make it to the Mistlands, you can start crafting magical weapons, and you're able to start tapping into the incredible magic in the world of Valheim. As Huygen states, the mists permeate all that live and grow in these lands, and now it's a part of you as well. With Eider, you'll be able to cast all sorts of powerful spells. You get to start your own personal journey of learning how to wield this realm's powerful magic, I think, to prepare you to wield the Deep North power. You can harness the power of the Surtling cores with the Staff of Embers and throw fireballs at your enemies, making the sweltering heat of Muspelheim seem pathetic compared to what this staff can do. You think the 3-year winter that will herald the end times is cold? By crafting the Staff of Frost from Freezeglands, the mysterious organ from the Drakes of the Mountains, you can shoot freezing shards of ice to take down and slow your enemies. Grab a bloodstone and some celestial feathers and you can dominate the Ashlands just like Eikthyr with a lightning bolt shooting shotgun, a magical staff named Dunder. Tap into the Elder's power over the forest with the Staff of the Wild. Ancient natural forces lie curled and dormant within this staff, ready to be unleashed. So one by one, you learn to harness the power over all the different types of magic in the game. The Diverger are the ones that teach you how to harness this power. This isn't coming from Odin trying to help you defeat all the Forsaken. It's almost like the world itself. The creatures, the traces of magic, the Vikings that came before you, they're all working together to prepare you to be the most powerful Viking to rule this world, to wield the Deep North power to defeat Odin and help bring peace back to Valheim. Now, not all magic is free to wield. If you're willing to learn every type of magic that resides in the world of Valheim, it comes at a cost. Remember how we talked about Fader needing to make the sacrifice of his own people to acquire the power in the Deep North? Well, that theme is echoed in our own choices in the game. If you want to harness the power of blood magic, you better be prepared to make a small sacrifice. To tap into the same power that the fueling shamans use to shield their allies with a protection bubble, you can use a Staff of Protection to protect yourself and your friends, if you're willing to trade up to 40% of your health in the process. Want to summon a couple trolls to help you clean out crowds of monsters? Give up 1/3 of your health, and they'll do your dirty work for you, before turning on you in the end. And for another 40% of your health, you can even use the Dead Razor to summon some helpful allies. Even some previous Vikings in the game, possibly even your own friends. That's right, the skeletts that you summon are not just randomly summoned, inexplicably loyal skeletons that appear out of nowhere. By my count, there's about 99 unique skeletons you can summon, and at least 6 of them were Vikings that came before you that are mentioned in the runestones. Maybe you even knew them. Astrid had a memory returned to her from Odin that she was a mother of a son she's determined to find. Gudrun was no man's wife and no father's daughter. She would feel the weight of a babe on her breast when she woke. Harold was that Viking that fought Eikthyr, the old man of the forest, took a Draugr arrow to his ribs and lost his leg to Moder. Frida was that Viking that was taken by a serpent, and Agda was that Viking who was dying with a Draugr arrow lying near her heart. Bjorn had a really nice beard. And you can even summon Ask and Embla, the Norse equivalent to Adam and Eve, to fight by your side. So, what choice are you going to make? When V1.1 comes out, whenever that might be, it seems that you can either fulfill Odin's wishes and kill all the Forsaken and ascend to Valhalla, or unite with Odin's enemies, follow the clues left by the Winter Child, and restore peace to the world of Valheim. So I urge you to journey boldly into the Deep North. Do not give up. Ignore the ravens, find this hidden power, and become the rightful ruler of the 10th world.